I've been in politics a long time, and in our country we have charge and countercharge about personal problems. My friendship and respect for Cole never wavered because of these stories that were coming out about political money or something like that. I always felt that what Helmut Kohl did as Chancellor, particularly his essential role in unification, would outlive any political charge of the moment.
Mr. President, what was the first time you got to know Helmut Kohl?
I don't remember the first time I met Helmut Kohl, but I think it was when I was Vice President of the United States. And Ronald Reagan sent me to Germany a time or two for various missions. One of them was on the deployment of the Pershing II missiles. Helmut Kohl was a steadfast friend of the United States, and it was that visit that sticks out in my mind, but there were other visits as well. I remember going to Mittelruth, but I think it was with Werner, Manfred Werner. But then I went to the Berlin no man's land with Helmut Kohl and von Weizsäcker, who was president of Germany at the time. And that was a separate visit. So in there somewhere, I'd say early 80s is when I got to know this great man.
The most important political achievement in the political life of Helmut Kohl was the German reunification, of course, which he couldn't have done alone. You helped a lot, and some others. What was the impression of Dr. Kohl during this period of German reunification for you?
During the period of German reunification and the run-up to German reunification, Helmut Kohl stood tall. He wanted to see it happen, and he wanted to see it happen rapidly, although it happened more rapidly, I think, than he or I or Gorbachev or anybody thought it would. But once, he never wavered about wanting German unification. There was a lot of diplomacy that had to be done in connection with German unification. The British and the French were not too happy about rapid unification. There were a lot of problems with Gorbachev, who was a great leader of the Soviet Union. But Helmut worked the diplomacy, but always underlying his positions was his conviction that a unified Germany was not only good for the German people, but was good for Europe itself. A unified Germany in the center of Europe presented no threat, in his view, to any other country. Reunited the people. Germany would be strong, but would be good neighbors to all. And this is the position he very skillfully sold to those that had doubts.
How would you describe Dr. Kohl's personal style as a politician?
Dr. Kohl was a good politician. I was at his side watching him campaign from time to time. He reminded me of an American politician in a sense, and that's not a bad thing. I use that as a good thing. Seeing him out shaking hands, meeting in the crowd, charging across the square of some wonderful German city. And so he had this feel for people. He could get out and, in my view, take his message to the people through his great big presence. And I loved watching him in action. I saw him several times. And then after he left the office of Chancellor, I saw him interact with people then, and it was still that same presence, that same charisma that made him the longest lasting Chancellor in German history.
Mr. President, there are some people in Germany saying that the German reunification would have come anyway, regardless who was the Chancellor at that time. Would you think that's true?
I believe that German unification might have happened if someone else had been in office down the road, not when it did. What Chancellor Kohl did was to bring it about when it happened. In other words, he could have delayed, he could have said, well, listen to Margaret Thatcher and Mitterrand, we ought to, in the good of what they think, we ought to slow it down, but he didn't do that. So people can second guess, and they'd say, well, it might have happened anyway. Who's to say? I don't know. If you ask me, would it happen, you know, in this century we're in now? Probably. But it took strong leadership. It took a man of principle who could work with different points of view, particularly the Soviets. And I was proud to be at his side in convincing Gorbachev this was in their interest. And that man that leader was Helmut Kohl. So I don't know whether any historian could say, well, it never would have happened ever without Kohl. I can tell you with no fear of contradiction that it wouldn't have happened when it did without Helmut Kohl.
You mentioned tensions between Dr. Kohl on one side and Margaret Thatcher and François Mitterrand on the other side. Could you describe these tensions a bit more precisely?
Well, I think there was a little tension between Kohl and the French and the Brits, but it wasn't something you'd see visibly in meetings of the G7 or anything like that. There wasn't something that he had a confrontation with them. It was simply that they made clear that they thought that rapid unification of Germany might be not in the best interests of Europe. And also, they wanted in the deal. They wanted to have a place at the table, you might say. They wanted to expand the numbers of people working this problem to include their countries, and I can understand that. But Kohl handled them diplomatically very well, but just set his course on instant or quick unification. And I love working with him on it and staying in close touch on, like, I remember when Gorbachev was coming to the White House, and Helmut was very interested to see what Gorbachev would say about self-determination. And we did make a contribution, I think, by encouraging Gorbachev to say, wait a minute, the German people have a right to say. They have a right to say whether they should be unified. They have a right to say whether Germany should stay in NATO, for example. And Gorbachev, to his everlasting credit, took the position, let the German people decide this. If they want to stay in the Warsaw Pact, fine. If they want to stay in NATO, fine. Well, in my view, that issue was never in doubt, because I don't ever visualize Germany being a part of the Warsaw Pact. But Kohl, throughout all this, had strength, and he had commitment, and he never wavered in his belief that a free, independent, united Germany, and he would say inside NATO, was to the best interest of world peace, and he's right.
How could you personally help Helmut Kohl to overcome these tensions?
Well, Helmut Kohl was faced with some problems, but he overcame them by the strength of his belief and by his willingness to listen to people that differed, by his strong strong relationship with Gorbachev. That was critically important, and it was through that he overcame some of the objections. I remember the Poles were particularly worried about the Oder-Nessen line, about the border, and we wanted Kohl to say early on, we're going to recognize this border, but he wanted a unified Germany in their parliamentary way to come together and then say that. Well, we had a little work to do with the Polish people then, but Kohl's word was good. So I had no problem assuring the Polish leaders that came to us and say, wait a minute, we want to know where we stand. Say to them, wait a minute, this is going to work. You're going to have a unified Germany, and Germany will recognize that Oder-Nessen line, and just wait, just be patient, and sure enough, that's exactly what happened.
Listening to you, it seemed to be the easier part to convince Mikhail Gorbachev than, let's say, Margaret Thatcher or Mitterrand. How did you help? How could you convince Margaret Thatcher and Mitterrand to say, well, it's okay at this time, and you have to do it?
Well, I remember talking with Margaret Thatcher and Mitterrand about the timing of German unification. I did not personally convince either one that they should go with instant unification, you might call it. I think Helmut Kohl deserves the credit for that. I do remember trying to convince them in just private, very friendly discussions that they wouldn't have anything to fear from a unified Germany right in the center of Europe. I don't know whether I was persuasive, but the persuasive guy on all of that was Helmut Kohl. But it was going to go ahead anyway. There was a certain dynamic at work. And I don't think some outside country was going to stop German unification.
How was your personal communication in this period?
I had a lot of personal communication in this period with Helmut Kohl, a lot of phone calls. We ran up a big phone bill paid for by the American taxpayers. And he ran up one paid for by the German FRG taxpayers. So we were in touch by phone. We were in touch every time there was contact with Gorbachev. One or the other of us would share his latest thinking so that we would be prepared as a team, Kohl and Bush, United States and Germany, to overcome any objections that Gorbachev might have had. So there was a lot of personal contact. And I'm one who believes in personal relationships in foreign policy. Personal diplomacy, it's called sometimes. And I think it helped that Kohl had that same kind of relationship with Gorbachev that he had with me. Maybe not as close, maybe a little more suspicious, but nevertheless they liked each other. And they made it clear they could work together. So there was a lot of contact, and I think it helped probably.
It was the time Margaret Thatcher said, "We've beaten the Germans twice, and now they are here again." Didn't you worry about this?
Well, I didn't worry what Margaret said. I had great respect for her. I liked working with her. I think that simply expressed the concerns that she had about a unified Germany. I remember Mitterrand saying after unification, and maybe he said it before, I like Germany so much I wish there were two of them. There ought to be two of them. He said that in a conference out in Colorado when I was present. And it was a funny line, but it probably reflected some of what he was thinking. But this was, we wanted to hear these people out. We knew where they were coming from based on previous tough experiences in war. But I had convinced myself early on that Germany had earned its place as a democratic nation there in Europe, that it no longer had to keep going back and apologizing for the past, which it did over and over again. And so some of their concerns, France and England, was, look, we've been there. We had unfortunate experiences in World War II and World War I. And we got to be careful here. And my view was different. My view was Germany, through election after election after election, through being a good neighbor to country after country after country, should have the right of self-determination. So we had differences, but they didn't come to, fighting each other. It never got to that at all. I think maybe Mitterrand and Margaret might have thought I was a little naive, but they might have thought Helmut was pushing too hard. But that's too bad. We remained good friends with both of them, and so did Chancellor Kohl.
James Baker called this period the 3 years that changed the world. With all these dictators had to resign in Europe, you had a dictator very close to the United States, Castro. Did you hope in this period of time that Castro would resign in Cuba too?
I never occurred to me that German unification would have anything to do with Fidel Castro in this hemisphere, his resigning, his stepping down. I think the people of Cuba, to the degree they get news at all, felt that Marxism and totalitarianism was on the way out. And it has been. It has been in this hemisphere as well as in Europe. So I think they probably felt the handwriting was on the wall, but it never occurred to me that Fidel Castro would see what happened in unified Germany and said, I better get out of here.
In the last years, Mr. President, Helmut Kohl ran into some personal trouble, as you know. How did you perceive that?
How did I what?
How did you perceive that?
Well, I've been in politics a long time, and in our country we have charge and countercharge about personal problems. My friendship and respect for Kohl never wavered because of these stories that were coming out about political money or something like that. I always felt that what Helmut Kohl did as Chancellor particularly his essential role in unification, would outlive any political charge of the moment. And my friendship never wavered, nor did my respect for him. He's a good man. I think it's wonderful that as we sit here now in the year 2003, there seems to be a rising of popularity for this man. And in my view, it's a well-deserved because of history, because of what he did.
Yesterday you said Helmut Kohl is a true friend. What do you mean by that, a true friend?
I believe friendship is important. And I said here at Texas A&M yesterday that Helmut Kohl is a true friend. And you can put that on a personal basis, a man whose word of honor is good, a man who is going to have strong points of view, but also will listen to others. And then you can put it on the official basis. Germany and the United States are true friends. Everyone knows there's been some bumps in the road, but I know everybody in my family feels Germany and the United States are true friends. And that's a fact. And there's going to be differences on the UN or some little thing like that we look back on 5 years from now and say, what the hell was that all about? And I don't worry about it because we got too much fundamental going for the two countries together. And we're going to make out just fine.
Looking into the future, what do you believe will be the image of Helmut Kohl in, let's say, 30 years?
In 30 years, people are going to look back and see Helmut Kohl, his image, as a very powerful leader, a man of deep conviction, who really, you might say, shaped history, if not changed history, by the unification of Germany and by then his leadership and working with Gorbachev and others as the whole Eastern European bloc came apart, as the Warsaw Pact collapsed, and those countries replaced dictatorship, totalitarian governments with democratic governments. Now that is a significant accomplishment, and Helmut Kohl won't take all the credit. There were other players involved, courageous men like Havel in Czechoslovakia then, and Lech Walesa in Poland, and many others. But Helmut will get a lot of credit because he had this strength to recognize that Germany could be unified without antagonizing the armies of then Soviet Union. I worried. We had people saying to me, you should go to the Berlin Wall and dance on the wall. You ought to go dance on the wall. The leader of the Democratic Party here, the leader of the Democratic Senate and House were saying, go dance on the wall, show the emotion. The stupidest damn thing I could have done, because that would have complicated things for Helmut Kohl and made it very difficult for Gorbachev. Who knew then how the Russian forces would react if they said, wait a minute, enough is enough, we're no paper tiger, and if Gorbachev doesn't see it, we do. And you could well have had a military confrontation if it hadn't been handled well by Chancellor Kohl and Gorbachev, and hopefully by our participation.